How does it get to this point? Chamberlain comes back and he waves a white paper and he says, peace in our time. And we look back and say, how could you say a thing like that? Look, just read Mein Kampf. Just read, look what the guy's doing. Yeah, well, we're looking at history after. We know we know what happened. So it's obvious to us, but if you're living through it, it's very easy to confuse hope with fact. In fact, that's really what people often do. They hope the situation will go this way. They hope that things will unfold, but it's not really the way history is going because God has a mandate. He's got a program. And as the Medrash points out, it's been in effect since Ma'aseh Bereshit, going back to that pasuk. That pasuk shows you that God already knew in advance. There's no Jewish people yet. What are we talking about? Galus Babel and Galus Medai and Galus Yavin and Galus Edom and Mashiach and all these things. There's not even an Avraham yet. But he's alluded to, right? It says Behibram. When God made the world, right? Behibram, right? Behibram, but also Avraham is the same letters. So, it shows you that all of that was intended from the beginning. No matter how random things seem to be unfolding, none of it is that way. And yet it's telling you that the best way to participate, because ultimately speaking, what does this do? This empowers us. Again, a mashal, very simple mashal. If you're somebody who runs a business and you have a certain, a goal to reach with your business, and you're looking around because you need help, and you're looking at different employees, you want to elevate someone to a higher position to take more responsibility. So you walk around to see who's doing what, and you see there are people on the floor like they clock it at 9 o'clock in the morning, they leave at 5 o'clock or 5:05, like that. And they're only concerned about getting it, but they have to get done so they don't get fired, and they're away. And some other guys walking around picking up things off the floor, putting them where they're supposed to belong, staying a little bit longer, coming a little bit earlier, seemingly taking responsibility above and beyond what he was hired to do. So you say to yourself, this person's he's got tools, he's got koiches, got abilities that someone can rely upon, and you give him a promotion. Same thing. God looking around, he says, I'm going to bring my world to perfection. I will accomplish my goal. There was never any question about that. But I'm looking for people who want to be involved. I don't need your help, but I certainly will enjoy it for your sake. You need the right tools. You need the right consciousness. So sometimes the Kodesh Baruch Hu, he will, inspire people because they have the potential and they don't know it yet. So Hashem will do things to reveal it to you. But, after that, it's up to you. So we're being told over here, right? This is telling us that that's what Sod is. Sod empowers a person to be able to be a partner with the Kodesh Baruch Hu on the highest levels possible to bring creation to fulfillment. And there's nothing better, there's nothing higher than that. I know the people, I'll be asked right after this ends, because I've been asked before, I can't learn Zohar. How am I supposed to learn Zohar? So that'll be the more practical part towards the end of the second session, B'ezras Hashem. But you'll see that the Zohar is like an approach. It is a sefer specifically, and the material itself you cannot duplicate it. It is unique. It is ideas that you cannot make up. It's such a proof of the divinity of Torah if you ever needed one, right? But it's such a proof because there's nobody, even in their wrong mind, could ever come up with the Zohar and the information it has and what it focuses on. And it's amazing because anyone who learns it will probably tell you that as you do learn it and you start to absorb more of it, you start to feel some type of otherworldly reality attached to it that you don't get from learning Gemara or Medrash or Chumash or Mishnah and all the lower levels itself. So to finish off, for today, more or less, the Arizal, the Vilna Gaon, he actually found, and the Arizal, but the Vilna Gaon found a wonderful allusion to this actually in the Chumash itself. And at the end of Parshas Bashalach, we have our first fight with Amalek. Not really our first fight, but our first official fight with Amalek. Amalek was a nomadic people that came hundreds of miles, or along a big distance, just to attack the Jewish people. They weren't even one of the Canaanite nations. If they hadn't attacked the Jewish people, we wouldn't have attacked them. Certainly not right away. They weren't even inside Eretz Canaan. And they did it anyhow. They came across and they attacked the Jewish people. And Rashi brings down a whole mashal about why God allowed them or brought them in. And you'll notice every time we're about to accept Torah, Amalek shows up first. So Amalek showed up there in Refidim before Har Sinai, and Haman shows up in Purim time before the Kabbalah Torah part 2, as the Gemara says, by Purim time. So always have to have Amalek in some form first. And likewise, Amalek came along once again right before we got back here to Israel, because it's all part of this process. And we'll talk a bit about Amalek some more later on, but it's unique. As an enemy, he's unique. It's the only enemy of the Jewish people that God takes on personally and says, I am at war. Not just you, I'm at war with Amalek midor dor, in every generation, until he's gone. So much so that we have a mitzvah of Zechiris Amalek, of Mechias Amalek, but Parsha Zachor is a mitzvah to remember what he did right in advance of Purim, because that's what Haman comes in all things. It's all tied together, but it's like so prominent. And the simple explanation is because he was the first one. So he kind of ruined it for everybody. By attacking us, he made it seem like we're no longer invincible. He got slaughtered in the end. Doesn't make a difference. Some of them survived, and people, they'll find excuses and reasons that rationalize and justify and turn it around somehow against God and the Jewish people, even though there's explanations of why it took place. But that's what he was. But we know from Chazal that Amalek really represents a lot more. In fact, it's brought down that if you take the letters of Balak and Bilam and combine them, you get two words. You get the word Bavel, which is the first exile the Jewish people went to, and the word Amalek, because they were rooted in the same Shorish Elyon, the upper root in the spheres, as Amalek. They descended from the reality of Amalek. So Amalek is not just a people, he's a reality. And that's why, for example, it's brought down, that the Rambam brings down, that in the mitzvahs, in Hilchos Malachim, the different wars we had, there's a mitzvah deraisa, a mitzvah, Mechames mitzvah, which means an obligatory war that the Jewish people had to fight, which means even a chassan who just got married and a kala, and everybody has to help out. And mechamas reshus, not necessarily. But mechamas mitzvah, everybody has to be involved because it's a mechamas mitzvah. And going and fighting the Canaanim was such a war. So he says we no longer have that war anymore because there's no Canaanim. There might be Canaanim, intermittent amongst the nations, but today there's no real purebred Canaanim anywhere. We either kill them, wipe them out, or they intermarry, they disappear, but there's no Canaanim. So the mitzvah of fighting against the Canaanim no longer exists. And then he brings down, there's also Mechamas mitzvah against Amalek, which Shaul was supposed to have finished off in his time, but didn't because he kept Agag alive a little bit too long, even L'Shem Shemayim, but that was a mistake. And the Rambam does not say that the mitzvah does not apply today. He doesn't add those words, implying it can still be mitzvah today. So the Brisker Rav discusses this, whether Hitler had a status of Amalek. Some say that Haman himself was not actually a purebred Amalek, but since he took on the way of Amalek, he had a soul of Amalek in him, so therefore he had the status of Amalek. So a person can have the status of Amalek by virtue of the fact that they create doubt in divine providence. So if someone comes along and says that their contribution to science was they taught the world you don't need God for the creation process, that's Amalekian. Anything that a person does in this world, and that's why Chil Hashem is such a bad thing. When a Jew does a Chil Hashem, profanes the name of God and makes people believe that God's not real at any level, and that could just be by watching you daven without kavana, right? They get the impression that God's not real, that's Amalekian. But it doesn't make you Amalekian, just means you did an Amalekian thing. But if you make a lifestyle out of that, that can give a person the status of being Amalekian. So that was a major war, a major turning point in Jewish history, and it's been going on ever since. And here we are today, this Shabbos coming up, it's Parshas Zachor. So Amalek is very much part of our everyday reality because of the fact that Amalek equals the gematria of Safek, which means doubt. And we're always fighting against doubt. I mean, Purim is a whole day of das. And to defeat Amalek, you have to have das. So Hashem tells Moshe Rabbeinu at the end of Parshat B'Shalach, he says to him, right, place it in the ear, Baznei Yeshua, that I will eradicate the memory of Amalek from under heaven. That's what he says to Yeshua. It's unusual language. Just say, tell Yeshua this is going to be an ongoing war, and I'm going to eventually eradicate Haman. What's ba'aznei? So, you could say a thing like that if you want someone to whisper it. It's a secret. But he wasn't telling him a secret. This is something everyone needs to know. We all need to, not just Yeshua. Everyone needs to know. We need to. We do. It's right there. Chumash. It's not like a secret. If it's a secret, then it wouldn't be the Chumash, because there are lots of secrets that Hashem told Moshe we don't know about. They're not in the Chumash, but it's right there in the Chumash. It's not a secret. So what's Baznei? So the Gra points out that the Gemach of Baznei is equal to Sod, Kabbalah, and he says the word equals Sod, because the way to fight Amalek at first is through Sod. You need Sod to fight Amalek. And Amalek is the last thing we have to defeat in history to bring the world to the Messianic era. We can already be in the Messianic era, even if Amalek is still existing. We have been in the Messianic era pretty much probably ever since 1990, 5750. And we'll maybe get to that later on, Bezrat Hashem, but that's another books I've written. But you can be, right? Moshe Rabbeinu was the Messianic year in his time. He was walking the face of the earth for 79 years while Parah was having his way. You can have evil coexisting even at the beginning of the Messianic era, but the end of the Messianic era, no. All the evil has to be gone. So Amalek has to go. That's the finale of the Messianic year, or at least of transitioning to Yemos HaMashiach, getting rid of Amalek. And how you do that? B'derech Sod. Because if you don't do it B'derech Sod, you can't fight it. All that confusion that we're living with that's causing people to go the other direction, to turn their back on God, to turn their back on Torah, to do mitzvahs half-heartedly, all that, it's all from Suffolk. Because the more you believe in God, the more committed you are to him. The more you know God, the more you're going to love him. The more you're going to submit to his will. The more you're going to make your will like his will, so his will will be like your will, and you will devote yourself to being his shutaf, his partner in the fulfillment of creation. That's all b'derech sod. You need the sod. The sod is that soul. And the Gra even says elsewhere that anybody who learns Torah without sod is like having a body without a soul. The sod itself, that's the neshama. That's what drives everything. Even though our focus, but then again, that's the whole world. The whole world's doing exactly that. In this week's Parsha, we have Parsha Tetzaveh, which is tied to the whole idea. You have the big day kahuna, the clothing of the Kohen Gadol. So, if expressions in the world like clothing makes the man. You put on clothing to make yourself into what you want to be. But the Torah says, no. Clothing reveals the person. Clothing has to be a vehicle to allow the soul to come out. And that's really what Purim's all about. But Purim is the holiday of Sod. Because as it says, Yayin, Yotzei Sod. When wine goes in, Sod comes out. But not personal secrets. Not things that you would rather keep to yourself because they're too embarrassing. But the soul. And if you remember the mashal the Rav Hutner uses to explain the drinking on Purim, about how basically it's to neutralize the body so you can be a soul. The soul can be revealed on the outside. Well, that's really what we're working in the entire, but that's what Sod does. That's what Sod is. It's taking what's on the inside and revealing to the outside. In the Messianic era, that's all reality is going to be. What we live in today, with all this doubt and all this chitzonius and materials and physicality, externalities and all these and that, will all disappear.